Hey everybody, Thomas is here again with another Mosaic training video. This one is going to go over the plan for the strength phase of this kind of linear periodization version of the training plan. So let's just go over this quickly. And so for the basics, this by far more than the hypertrophy or the upcoming power phase is the type of training that I have the most experience with for sure. So I feel like I've kind of dialed in what works for me on this. So anyway, this one I feel a lot more confident in providing kind of guidance on than the other ones. So as we're going through, a lot of these exercises are going to be based around your one rep max. So it's very helpful to go through before you actually start the phase and figure out your one rep max for a lot of these exercises. Things like weighted pull-ups, or if you're doing deadlifts or bench press or whatever. That's kind of a helpful benchmark to know as you're going through. So the general rule when you're actually performing these exercises is you want to stick with between kind of 3 to 5 sets. You could even go down to like two sets if you're doing really hard stuff. But really try to keep the reps low, like 2 to 5 reps is the kind of strength window. Anything above that, you get into a little bit more hypertrophy training. Um, then this the strength phase more than the hypertrophy phase, which was we'll talk about a little bit later. It is very helpful to do kind of compound exercises, multi-joint stuff. So things like pull-ups, where you're working a lot of muscle groups at the same time. Deadlift obviously is one that people are getting into a lot more in climbing, which is a very hits a lot of muscle groups. Um, and it's helpful to focus on the kind of specific movements you want to do in climbing. So again, things like pull-ups and rows and stuff like that. There's nothing wrong with doing not really accessory lifts, but things that you want to keep, like a balanced strength. Um, so for instance, I'm doing a lot of pushing, even though, climbing not a huge amount of pushing, but just to maintain that kind of balance because I've noticed a bit of muscle imbalance of late. So it's good again to kind of think through climbing specific movements and train by doing something that approximates those movements as closely as you can, rather than targeting very specific muscle groups like we kind of learned from the hypertrophy phase. Um, so this one's nice, coming from the hypertrophy, which was it was very time consuming. The strength phase are a lot fewer exercises that you're doing, a lot more rest between those, and it just feels a little bit less draining so far than the hypertrophy was. But one thing you will notice that more than the hypertrophy phase, you want to kind of order your exercises with the priority or focus exercises first, because you will definitely notice, especially if you're doing compound movements, that you'll just have kind of like a systemic fatigue that affects your later movements. So try to kind of front load your workout with the things that you really want to focus on. That being said, hypertrophy, we could kind of get away with grinding through. So even if you're feeling kind of weak, it was useful to get through a hypertrophy workout. But with strength, you really want to avoid that if you can. So one good kind of rule is that if you fall below 80% of your one rep max, it's a good sign that you should probably just stop that workout, maybe even take a rest day the next day. Just basically that you're too fatigued to get the proper stimulus for true strength gains. And then in terms of the variables with your exercises, um, I've been trying to increase resistance first. So I mean, the rep window is pretty narrow anyway, but I've been trying to kind of play with the resistance more than the reps, and definitely more than the sets. And we'll kind of go over those specific reps and sets for the different exercises later. Um, so again, kind of going and borrowing a lot of knowledge from the lifting world. They have a lot of helpful terminology. one of which is the rate of perceived exertion. You'll hear people say RPE a lot. Um, and it goes, all the way from 1 to 10. But in our strength window, we kind of are looking at these last few. So if your rate is, 7, you can read these, but it feels hard, but you can do it. 8 becomes harder, but you still don't really have any worries about completing the workout. 9 is, quite a struggle, but so you might not be positive that you can do it, but you got through it. And 10 is like, I don't even know if 10 is really achievable. It's like maxed out. Like if you're lifting and a fly landed on your bar or whatever and added that much weight, you would fail. So it's just like the absolute peak of what you can do. So for strength stuff, it's helpful to start off when we're talking about like progressive overload throughout this cycle. To start off at kind of a level 7 and work your way up to more of a 10. Again, 10 is kind of not quite attainable with the way we talk about it. But anyway, working up to your absolute max effort, and then if you do that quickly enough with your cycle, you can kind of figure out your new 1 rep max, and then you kind of start back at maybe in an 8 or so and work your way back up. This might not come into play if we're doing like a 4-week cycle. You might not have the time to work your way all the way up to max effort and then start over again. But for some of this stuff, if you're making very significant progress, you certainly could. Um, and then the other thing to remember, so one of the other benefits to thinking about this progressive overload and keeping it in mind the whole time is that climbers, at least for me, and for a lot of the kind of training, training ideas, training plans that I've seen other people do, is there's not a lot of thought put into like the actual effort. A lot of it is more, um, I'm training to failure. That is how I get strong. I do that all the time, that kind of thing. And I definitely fell into this camp. And it's kind of a different. There are a few different factors in there. A lot of it is like putting too much emphasis on the performance of a training exercise. So like my hangboarding, like if I put too much ego into like I want to always be improving on hangboard, and I want to make sure that I can hang a certain amount every time. That doesn't help with this kind of thing. But I found that if you have it in the forefront of your mind that yes, I'm training. I'm not going completely to failure this time. Maybe in a couple weeks I will be up to that point where I'm doing my max effort. If I keep that in mind, it's a lot easier to kind of rein it in. And there are a few benefits to that. One is that you can train more often, so you're not going to be completely worked for your next plan or for your next actual training day. And then you do get this kind of benefit of the progressive overload, which has been shown to work pretty well, where you're kind of stacking this fatigue up and up and up until you get to the point where your body just needs to rest. So you will hear people. There are people out there who kind of think about this, and it has a good effect. So if you again, I talk about Yves Gravel a lot. He's talked about this in a couple of videos where he trains very very often. I think basically every day trains his fingers, but doesn't go completely to failure. And if you've seen any of his insane feats of strength, you know that it works. So, and I mean, it's not a climbing specific thing. You hear this about people were surprised to see in like the Kenyan running community and the training that they do that they notice that oh yeah they don't seem to be training super hard. Like they're doing 400 repeats or something, but they're not dying at the end of it compared to some of the other groups of runners. But it just means that they are holding back a little bit of energy so that they can do another very difficult training day the next day. Whereas somebody who didn't hold that back would be completely trashed and wouldn't be able to do anything productive for a day or two. So anyway, just keep that in mind. I think it's very helpful, and I think it's something that climbing training doesn't really talk about quite enough in terms of the actual effort. There's a lot of metrics around, weight and body weight and all that stuff, but try to keep that effort level in mind too. And it'll go up and down. There's some days like I've talked about before. I just had one the other day where I just felt like I didn't have very much energy, and sometimes what the weight that I did last week that felt like a 7 now feels like a 9 for whatever reason. And you can use that to kind of tweak your. It doesn't feel as bad to have to go down in weight, for instance. In that case, if you're keeping um, this RPE idea as the main focus. So anyway, that's something to think about. Okay, so going through the actual ideas of this cycle for me. So again, kind of going through the different pieces of the training for actual climbing, on the wall time. It's very helpful to focus on one or two very hard moves. So it's a good time to really get audacious and try stuff that you think is way beyond you, um, and just kind of work slowly to figure out one or two moves, and just even keeping it as like training in mind, like not necessarily even working it with the idea that, yeah, I want to figure this out, I want to get this sequence, but even knowing that if you're just pulling on these holds or even trying to pull on these holds, is kind of a workout in itself. um, I remember like way back when I started climbing, I don't remember who it was that talked about this, but there were a couple of people who got very strong, and they didn't really have a training plan or anything, but they would come into the gym, they would make up problems all the time, and they would always start with like one move, and it was one move that like they could not do, and it took them many tries to get that one move, and then they figured that sequence out, and then they added a move, and they would build up this like ridiculous boulder problem like that, and that was enough to get them super strong. So I know that's anecdotal, and it's not. Definitely not the thing to aim for, but it's an idea to kind of how to focus your climbing time rather than just going in and getting a bunch of volume or something. And then outside, this is a very good time. Hopefully, you've kind of scouted out some projects during your hypertrophy phase, and this is a good time to go through and kind of work through individual moves. I found a few boulder problems that I want to work on, and one of them in particular just has a, basically every move feels equally hard, and every move feels, to me, equally impossible. But it's just on that kind of cusp of like I could potentially see being strong enough to do it, which is kind of it's a nice boulder problem to find, because it's a good motivation for this. But anyway, if you have the time to go outside, working through the individual moves, figuring out your beta, just kind of, yeah, that's a good time to be working, quote, working a problem during this time. One thing you might run into, and I've run into this myself, is it's difficult to stay motivated for a problem that is this difficult for you. There have been a lot of good videos recently from pro climbers like John Glassberg on The Nest, I think, and Daniel Woods on Return of the Sleepwalker and all that stuff, where they talk about these really long-term projects, or like the talking or listening to like Nale going through the Lapnor project, like the stuff that they have been multiple year projects for them, and it have felt impossible at times, but they just kept going back, kept plugging away. Um, being able to figure out how to stay motivated for that is really helpful. Um, One of the things for me, kind of like I was talking about earlier for the indoor, individual move stuff, is sometimes it does help to think of it like training. Some people might not like that, but if you go to it without the thought that like, yeah, eventually I'll be able to do this project, but more that, hey, this is a great project to try just to get stronger, even if I never get it. um, some people don't like that. Some people, it's nice to have the thought even in the back of your mind that maybe one day I'll be able to get this. But the other thing that is very helpful is to find a good partner or partners to go, so that if one of you isn't motivated, the other one can be like, hey, come on, let's just go hang out at the problem, work on it for a little bit. Is that makes a huge difference. And um, one thing I have struggled with is that a lot of people tend to uh, not many people really enjoy long-term projecting. It's not as common as I would think, and it's much easier to like bounce around between different areas. Saying like, oh, we went to this one area a couple times. Let's try something new, which is fine. It's good to get your climbing vocabulary and kind of build your pyramid up and whatever, but it's not very helpful when you're trying to project these hard things. You're not gonna climb something at your absolute limit in 1 or 2 sessions. It's gonna take you a long time. Um, so either finding a group that enjoys projecting, or kind of mixing it up and climbing, with different people on different days. Just because I'm not saying that you should stop climbing with people because they don't want to project. Um, but it's good if you really want to focus on a single boulder problem or route, and you want to find this kind of long term project that you kind of have to know that you put in a little bit more time than just the kind of fleeting bouncing back and forth mentality. So during climbing, it's still, as everybody says, climbing is the most important training for climbing. So try to keep your climbing time high compared to your off the wall time, if possible. So again, kind of 2/3 climbing time is a good benchmark to hit. But again, if you have more time, if you have a lot more time to dedicate to climbing, you can, as long as you hit kind of a time threshold, just to make sure you're getting your actual climbing movement in. There's not as much wrong with adding more kind of exercises afterwards, off the wall exercises. I mean, keep in mind that it's always going to take its toll in terms of energy. It's not just time, but anyway, that's something I mentioned last time. That's good to keep in mind. Okay, so off the wall, um, going through the very climbing specific types of training. So I've gone through a lot of different hangboard protocols. Um, so I feel like I have kind of exhausted a lot of the kind of the general things, and I have found the most useful um, is max hangs, and specifically one-armed hangs with assistance, unless you're super strong, and then you either add weight or just do body weight. Um, there are a few benefits here. I find that it's really nice to be able to isolate the individual hand, because each hand is going to have the one is going to be a little bit stronger than the other in certain grip positions. For me, it's actually different grip positions. One is stronger than the other, which is interesting. But it's nice to be able to keep track of both individually. And then the other benefit is when you're doing your max hangs, some people like to do a straight arm, some people like to do it, lock off or kind of somewhere in there. But you always want to do it with your shoulder engaged, no matter what. And that shoulder engagement kind of had a lot of side benefits that I didn't expect. So after doing the last time, after doing a cycle of one arm hangs, I found that like my one arm pull up motion felt a lot better. I've always had trouble going from like straight arm to the first like engaging motion, and having that shoulder strength helped a lot. And also for things like really wide, spanny kind of iron cross moves, those kind of that shoulder engagement really helps, I find. So anyway, that's just another thing to keep in mind. It's not something that you should be focusing on the shoulder part of a hang, and definitely if the shoulder becomes the limiting factor, that's something that you want to worry about, or change up if you're doing one arm stuff, and maybe at that point go back to two armed hanging. But it's just something to keep in mind that I find kind of helpful. So edge size, Anywhere from kind of 15 millimeters to 22 millimeters is good. I think you want to, the general rule is you want to try to be able to hang it with like 90% body weight. I think there's a little bit of wiggle room there. Maybe it should be like 80, 85% as the minimum of your body weight that you should hang. But there are so many different hangboards that have good edges of these sizes. I think you'll be able to find one. I mean, the common one is like the Beastmaker middle edge, um, which is about 22 to 23 millimeters and a little bit in cut. That's a nice one to work on. Um, Side note, one thing to keep in mind is you want to try to focus on hanging the flat parts. Don't try to cheat. I fell into this trap for sure, kind of convincing myself that, oh, it's just a comfort thing to like nestle your fingers up into the corner. Just avoid that. You're kind of doing yourself a disservice by cheating on that kind of thing. Anyway, that's a side note. Um, so the big change for me, I've pretty much always worked on the bigger end of this spectrum, either 20 mils or 22 mils. Um, and this time I'm trying to do 15 millimeter edge. So that does a couple of things for me. I mean, one, obviously it's a smaller edge, so it's going to be more challenging. But it also means that I'm going to need to have more assistance, um, which I think will help in terms of what I mentioned before, where sometimes your shoulder feels like the limiting factor. So the fact that I'm putting more strain on my fingers, a little bit less strain on my shoulder, I think that might be a good kind of stimulus for me. Also, in general, it's just good to mix up the stimulus for any of these exercises that we're talking about. So I think swapping between edge sizes is not a bad idea anyway. And I don't know why I haven't tried this yet. I think I just didn't think I would be able to hang on to it well enough. But so far, it's feeling pretty good, and we'll see later on if it's actually helpful. So I have been doing a pretty standard workout where I do my one arm hangs, aim for 7 to 10 seconds. Try to be strict about this. Don't hang on for 5 seconds and kind of fiddle your way into it. But 5 sets of that, basically going straight from one hand, chalking up, go to the other, and then resting for about 3 minutes. So basically, I hang every 3 minutes, and the rest is just that kind of 3 minute gap, minus whatever that hang time was. So the resting, there is no reason to not rest more. I guess if you're feeling, basically you want to rest until you have that feeling of being ready to hang again. You don't want to like get to the end of your rest and be like, I'm still feeling kind of weak from that last one. Rest until you feel like you are fully ready to give your maximum effort again. That's an important one for basically for all of this strength training. And then after that, I've been finishing with a few sets of 3-finger hangs on the Beastmaker edge, and alternating that with micro edge hangs on these homemade just 6 millimeter holds. The 3-finger, I just want to get stronger at that position. That grip position is bad for me. It always has been. It always kind of feels kind of tweaky, like I always feel it in my wrist, and training that is really helping so far. And then the micro edges are really interesting. There is a lot of talk about um, developing this finger pulp, as gross a term as that is, and how training on these small edges and developing that pulp really helps with any kind of small edge when you're climbing. So if you have trouble with holding on to really small stuff, like if it just doesn't feel possible, you could try throwing in some of these micro edge hangs. And you can always do it with reduced weight, doing these, by the way, are the micro edge hangs I've been doing two arm. But if you need to reduce the weight, you can do that. But trying to keep it, I don't know if maybe like 8 millimeters might be the minimum that you want that would develop that kind of finger pulp. Basically, I mean, you want to keep it single pad for sure. And for me, 6 mils is kind of half. At least when I look at where the painful wear line is when I'm done, because these do get painful. It's about kind of half pad, a little bit less. Um, but yeah, those seem to help for sure, and I think they'll be really useful for training that kind of small edge. It's not even really pain tolerance, at that point, you don't even feel that pain because you have that finger pulp built up. Um, so that's the hanging portion. The other big experiment for me is incorporating the no hang training. So again, I'm stealing this stuff from Yves Gravel, but he has been a big proponent of this, and again, you can see from his results that he's doing something right. I don't know if this is it, but it's something that he's been working in. And again, I'm trying to use the 15 mil edge for this, and I very similar to the max hangs. I've been doing 5 sets, and you basically just you find the weight that you do, load it up, and then you lift it kind of like it feels kind of like a one-armed sumo deadlift, two for 2 reps, and then switch arms. They're kind of nice. They don't really take that much time. You can do it after a little climbing warm up, and they feel satisfying, and they don't feel super draining either. So so far they've been really nice. I like that kind of pure isolation on the fingers, and it feels a little bit more like a contact strength workout. So I think it's kind of nice to mix in the longer duration hangs with these kind of loading type no hangs. And then I've been finishing off with just a few lifts with using the pinch on my no hang device. And these are kind of tricky. It's tricky to it's weird to think about actually actively engaging the pinch before lifting off, which you do. Like with the no hang, you're basically trying to isometrically keep that half crimp position while you lift. But with the pinch, you have to really think about engaging the pinch and then lifting while keeping that kind of tension. Which, and anyway, it's just an interesting kind of different feeling. But I figure it's helpful to kind of train that thumb strength and that pinch strength because it comes up somewhat often. And then finally, the kind of not quite climbing specific thing that I'm trying are these wrist lifts. So the wrist wrench is the device that I think kind of started it, but it is a asymmetrically loaded lift where you're essentially attempting to keep your wrist engaged as much as possible while the device that you're using is trying to open up your hand and to kind of wrench itself free. And the idea, again, sorry, I keep invoking Yves' name, but he talked about doing this when he started getting into grip sports, and the fact that before he worked on this, holding on to kind of the big, kind of just engaging open hand slopers, kind of like the Beastmaker 45 edge, uh, felt hard to him, and then he started doing these wrist lifts, and he found that it made a huge difference. So I'm kind of hoping that is the case because I definitely have trouble with that position and feeling strong in that position. So we'll kind of see. Again, they really don't take any time. You can work them in. These are good to work in as like a superset with some of your main lifting exercises, and yeah, it's just nice for overall kind of wrist health. And again, we'll keep an eye on it and see if it's worth doing. Okay, so on to the fully kind of off the climbing into more of the weightlifting spectrum of things. Um, so for kind of breaking it up, like we did with hypertrophy, I'm thinking in terms of um, kind of planes of movement. So I'm for the kind of overhead. The obvious one is doing weighted pull-ups. So I've been trying to keep the sets a little bit high and doing 2 reps. So yeah, 5 sets of 2 reps seem to work well. Again, for these, like with all of this stuff, really make sure you rest and that you're ready to go, just because these are such a full body effort that you really want to be able to pull all the way through. In addition to these, mostly just so I can do something at home, I've been working on the isometric one arm lock off. So just trying to keep it 90 degrees, adding weight, basically holding another weight in the other hand, and then trying to keep it in that 7 to 10 second window, kind of like the one arm hangs. So I just feel like sometimes I have trouble engaging for a long time, um, in that 90 degrees. So I was just kind of hoping to work that isometric strength as well. So in the kind of middle plane, I've been working on iron cross stuff. So that is either using a band for assistance and trying to go into a full iron cross, which is it's nice just because you can completely tailor it to your strength. The main thing here is the iron cross is quite the kind of technical thing as well, which you might not think. There's so many positions that you have to think about. The ideal being you roll your shoulder forward, so it's almost kind of like a fly in the end, and you have like a false grip on the actual ring, and I'm just kind of going through and figuring that out with assistance. And please look up. There are a bunch of videos from actual gymnasts who know the technique and who know the training, that have good ideas for how to work that. And then the other thing that is helpful are the iron cross pulses. So you kind of start off in the main upper, just engaged position, and then you start to go into an iron cross as far as you can, which for me is not very far, and then you come back into the main the support hold, I think it's called. Um, but that those kind of help just kind of work through that motion as well. And again, you're not going all the way into an iron cross unless you're super strong. But it you can kind of go a little bit further each time, as you're getting stronger. And then for the kind of lower plane uncurling or on the pulling motions, I've been trying to do heavy curls. Um, my gym doesn't have an easy curl bar or a preacher curl bench, um, but I think that would be my ideal for doing this. So what I've been doing, because it's very easy for this motion to cheat and engage your back and your legs, is just resting up against the wall, so that your back is kind of taken out of the equation, and then doing either hammer curls with dumbbells or bar curls on the cable machine, were kind of the two things that I have access to right now. I petitioned the gym to get a preacher curl bench and a curl bar, so we'll see if that works out. But anyway, that would be, if you have access to that, I think that would be the ideal. Okay, so then push stuff again, kind of three planes, and also, as we know, these are not nearly as helpful for climbing specificity, but it's just good to have an overall balance that you're working on. So for the overhead stuff, I really like handstand push-ups. They're nice just because they're easy to do at home. If you have the strength to do them, they're a good one to do. Otherwise, you can just do like military press, overhead press kind of stuff. Bench is always a good one, and apparently benching does kind of help with things like one-armed pull-up weaknesses. Just getting that strong in the bench, it can kind of hit some of those points that might be overall weaknesses for you. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for. But for all of this stuff, especially the kind of compound heavy movements, really think about getting your form down before you start to add weight. This is something I have trouble with. And I need to kind of back off every once in a while and take a lot of videos of myself to make sure I'm not doing something dumb, which I'm usually doing something dumb. So for the bench, just make sure you're kind of keeping it in that kind of 3 to 5 rep range, and definitely look at, depending on what you have access to, obviously, and if you have a partner or not, look at the ways to bench and max out on the bench or do these heavy benches safely, with a safety bar, underneath, like I have in the video here. It's a helpful thing to know how to do. And then for the lower pushing plane, weighted dips I think are very helpful for a lot of things. So again, maintaining that same kind of 3 to 5 rep range, using a dip belt, and just making sure you go down to sort of 90 degrees with your elbow and back up. I think these are pretty beneficial overall. They work a lot of different things. So I'm hoping those have a good effect. Okay, and then for the core stuff, the obvious one is the front lever. People, everybody kind of knows of this as a good climbing workout to aim for. Try to go for like slightly longer holds if you can, 5 to 10 seconds. And the nice thing about the front lever is, depending on your ability and even how you feel that day, there are so many different progressions that you can go through to hit that 5 to 10 second window. Sometimes I'm feeling strong and I can do a full front lever and do a set with that. Sometimes I'm not, and I'll do a straddle front lever, which takes off a lot more weight than you might think, makes it quite a bit easier. And then if I'm feeling particularly bad, I might do the single leg front lever where my other leg is tucked back, and then I might swap legs halfway through, or maybe alternate each set. But these are always good to do. It always feels like I am working, on fully engaging my whole body. For me, I feel it in my back quite a bit. Even though it's a classic core, you think of it maybe as more of a abdominal exercise. But I think that helps quite a bit with my body tension on especially steep overhanging stuff. The other one is working on the more difficult standing rollout, either with an ab wheel or on rings. These are good. Again, you want to make sure that you keep good form, and that is mostly keeping your hips rotated forward, so it kind of feels like you're hunching your back as you're going out and doing it. But the main thing, you just want to avoid arching your back and letting your back take any of that stress. And these are, for me, the standing rollouts on the wheel are super hard. They feel really difficult. The rings are a little bit easier just because you can play with the resistance more if you move forward, so that the rings are kind of pulling you back more when you're fully extended. It's easier. And then also the length of the strap makes a big difference for these, if you're using the rings to do them. But they're good. Again, another kind of full body engaging type of thing. And then the last one, which climbers seem to be kind of getting in on lately, are doing deadlifts. And these are nice. I'm not sure yet how much they've been helping me. I think they have. I mean, I feel like I've been getting stronger in the whole kind of posterior chain after starting doing deadlifts. But the main thing is, be very careful with these that you work on your form first. I've been bad about this and been trying to push the weight a little bit too quickly. And especially for me, I wind up getting stress in like my mid back, and I think it's because I'm doing too much weight, and it's causing me to hunch my back and doing the like cat back deadlift. So really think about engaging tucking your shoulder blades back, keeping that back flat. And the thing that helped me is trying to think about lifting slowly off the floor. It's easy to like get hyped up and like, kind of almost start jerking to get that initial lift off the floor. But thinking about like slowly engaging, I feel like that has been working a lot better for me. And it feels, to be honest, like I am able to lift more with that kind of mentality. But anyway, as everybody knows, there are many videos about how to deadlift properly. I am, certainly not even close to being an expert on that. So it's nice to see that. It's also cool to just get a little bit of inspiration for what people can do and how like unfathomable a 700-pound deadlift is or whatever. Like, that's just crazy to me. Um, but I'm sort of personally aiming for twice my body weight as a good goal for deadlifting. Um, and it's just kind of fun to mix it up. You know, deadlifts are a cool full body exercise. It's nice to have another thing, especially if you're like not motivated with your climbing or plateauing or whatever. Having something like deadlifts or benches with bench press, which you can progress in, you know, outside of your climbing performance, is kind of, it's just sort of fun. You're sort of hedging your bets in terms of your psych for training. But anyway, those are helpful. I'm trying to keep with the 3 rep, um, kind of my 3 rep max. I think going for pure 1 rep deadlifting is a bit too dangerous for me anyway. That seems a bit too intense. So doing 3 reps. Oh, the other thing to keep in mind that I've been really working on is learning how to breathe and brace for things like deadlifts and for bench press, especially. Um, to kind of keep that full body tension. I think that's really helpful. And I think it's something that it might be worth figuring out the kind of efficacy on the wall too. You know, obviously when you're climbing hard, difficult stuff, you're naturally like tensing up and potentially holding your breath. But I think maybe there might be some room to really keep that in top, you know, as top of mind to do the like really intense breathing and bracing for particularly stressful, tensiony moves. But anyway, it's just something to kind of add to your uh, your kind of repertoire of what your abilities are for that kind of thing. Okay, so for the full example week, now that we've gone through all the actual workouts or exercises, Monday I've been doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the gym, and Tuesday, Thursday at home. So it's again kind of like hypertrophy. It's pretty intense, you know, 5 days a week kind of thing. So Monday I've been doing the no hangs, the wrist lifts, and then the pull ups and bench at the gym. So I usually start off climbing, warm up, maybe try some hard stuff, um, trying to kind of hold myself back from getting too tired, and then going down and doing the no hangs and the wrist lift and all that stuff. Luckily for the no hangs, I don't feel like if even if I climb a little bit too much, it feels okay to do those. You know, I'm not super wiped because it's so isolated. Um, I still feel like I can be strong and do a good workout even if I've climbed quite a bit beforehand. So then on Tuesday at home, I've been doing the one arm hanging or the the hangboarding, and then handstand pushes, push ups, and lever training. And then Wednesdays are kind of optional. I've been going in doing, you know, more just kind of climbing, and then no climbing specific training, but still doing pull ups, dips, and the iron cross. But you can definitely, you know, take a rest day on Wednesday. I think it's probably a good idea. I just wanted to try to fit in one more um, set of gym exercises so that I could spread it out a little bit more through the week, and especially to do another set of pull ups in the middle of the week rather than waiting till the end where it might affect any kind of weekend plans. Um, Thursday is very similar to Tuesday, the hangboarding, but this time I'm doing the lock off work and then the rollouts. Friday kind of goes back to very similar to Monday with the no hangs, wrist lifts, and then I've been doing curls and deadlifts here. Um, these are Fridays. I've been doing a kind of rope league as well. That's been going on in the gym, which is super fun. Fun to have an excuse to get back on a rope, which I haven't done in a while. So I've been going in a bit early, just warming up, immediately going down and doing these workouts before getting too tired on ropes. So just kind of keep in mind that you want to make sure you're not super wiped from your climbing before you do your actual gym exercises. And I feel like Friday it might be an easy thing for people if they get off work, go to the gym if they do. It's easy to get caught up, climbing, having fun, and you're at that point maybe too tired to go down and do your workout. So, and then on the weekend, I've been trying to go outside if possible. If not, if the weather's bad or whatever, just going and doing a little bit of light gym climbing, or just rest. To be honest, I've been doing a lot of resting on the weekend. I've been feeling pretty wiped after a full week, full 5 days of training. So there is no shame in just resting or doing a bit of cardio, doing whatever. Everybody has chores and crap they have to do on the weekend. Don't feel like you have to fit in another workout for sure. This is pretty intense. Okay, so the measurements for success for this, or measurements of success for this cycle, the obvious one is always the assessment that we'll do at the end. And I think the strength cycle is going to have the most impact on the assessment. Most of those tests are strength specific. So a lot of hanging, a lot of levers, one arm pull ups, that kind of thing. So I'm hoping that my numbers will go up here. Then if I have any more success on these kind of strength benchmark climbs that I've been setting for myself, either on the kilter board, which I kind of went through a few videos ago, or on any of these outside projects, if I feel like I am stronger on those moves, that's a good measurement to keep in mind, even though it's not super objective. It's just a good thing good indicator that your effort is paying off. And then kind of like the hypertrophy, obviously keeping a log of everything that you're doing, all your workouts, and identifying places where you make a significant improvement more so than other ones might be a good indication that, hey, this is a movement that I'm weak in, where I have more potential to improve than maybe some of the other ones. So those are the main things to keep in mind. So that is the strength plan. I'm actually a couple weeks into it at this point, and it's feeling pretty good. I'm making good progress, so I'm pretty hopeful that it's going to pay off. But again, I think this is the one that I am most confident in terms of how effective it's going to be. So for any of these videos, if you're looking to build your mosaic, as I was saying, to take any of the stuff that I have laid out here, I think this is the part of the plan that I would feel most confident in providing to somebody else and saying, hey, this will probably work for you. So anyway, hopefully this is helpful. Again, if anybody has any ideas or any recommendations, especially for the gym stuff, because I'm not as well versed in that kind of thing, certainly comment below. Yeah, hopefully I will be back shortly with the actual assessment results video for the strength plan, and we'll kind of see how it goes. Then we'll move on to power, and then we'll be done with this one. So anyway, thanks everybody for watching, and I will see you next time.